Hey everybody, it is the Greg on Motivational Monday. How's everybody doing? I am excited. Jack to the highest jackticity. Yes, it is Monday. It's the start of a new week, and that's important that we get it off right. And I appreciate you tuning in, man. I got food for thought. You're going to be able to do the dishes all week long, and I'm bringing it good to you. The goods, I should say, the goods. But before we bring the goods, and we're going to talk, by the way, we're going to talk about leadership. It's something I think, man, we're lacking today. We need to work on it. And I really appreciate the people that step up and fill those gaps. But we'll talk more about that. But last week, we were talking about character. We were talking about archetypes. And the one character I left out is the character of kindness. You know, the character of Christ-like. I think it's important that we walk with that character. Integrity. You know, and that comes with leadership. I think the thing about leadership, and I think that people don't want to be leaders today, is because it carries more responsibility, it carries more weight, and others don't want that. I was sitting with a group of guys one time, and I asked them about being leaders, and they said, "Oh, I don't want to be a leader. I don't want to be a leader." I said, "I don't want to be a leader." I said, "What do you mean you don't want to be a leader?" I think it's a sexy thing. To be a leader is to be sexy, and they're like, "No," and they didn't want to take on carry the extra weight. They didn't want to also be judged by their peers, you know, by their friends. It's important, you know. Everybody wants to be liked. Everybody wants to be liked. But I think the fun thing about leadership is inspiring others. I think it's a beautiful thing to be able to inspire others. You know, when I first started out, you know, I only had one way of inspiring people, and that is through coaching. But leaders, being a good leader, also is a good mentor. He is also a good teacher. But the only way I came about, you know, leading people was through being that coach. And it didn't always work with everybody. I remember for myself, it's a funny story. I was playing tennis. I was learning how to play tennis. I hired this guy. I was paying him to teach me how to play tennis. And here, the third time we played, he said, "Dude, you might want to give this up." I said, "What do you mean give this up?" And he goes, "Well, you can't get the ball over the thing." And here I'm paying him, right? I said, "Damn you." I said, "Get back over there. I'll show you." And sure enough, I started hitting that ball like crazy. And he says, "Is that all it took?" See, I came from a family that I was coached. So I only knew how to coach. But I had to work hard. You know, sometimes you have to work harder on yourself than you do on your job. So I had to look at myself, evaluate myself, and learn how to be a better mentor and a better teacher. I think it's important. Yeah. And there's a big difference between being a leader and a manager. Like I said, the three qualities. A manager just keeps the status quo. Whatever the thermostat is set at, that's what a manager is supposed to keep it at. But I think as a leader, you have a strong understanding of behaviors and personalities about people. You know, where people are coming from. Some people haven't had it easy. You have to have a heart. I think it's important that a lot of people, they think, you know, people, I think the quote is, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. I think that's so true. And I think the other thing that leaders need to realize is that if nobody's following you, you're not leading. And that's very humbling. So look behind yourself once in a while. But there's a quote that Spider-Man says. It's a very interesting quote. He says, and I'm sure you all know this, with much power comes much responsibility. Well, I think that's backwards. I think with much responsibility comes much power. The more your responsibility, the more you take on that load, you know? And the more you take on that, the extra hours, work the extra hours, put the extra hour in. Like I said, working on yourself. You know? Remember, leaders are readers too. Leaders are readers. You have to be reading. That's how I learned. I learned through readers and other mentors, being around other leaders. Again, who are you hanging around with? You want to be good at something. I think I was telling somebody the other day, if you want your marriage to be better, you want to hang around with somebody that's been married 60 years and happy about it. You want to learn from them. And the thing about books is the books takes so much time out of the equation. You ain't got enough time on earth to learn everything you need to learn. So when you read a book, it's a good thing to do. And then also when you read that book, like Jim Rohn said, you go out and share it with other people, because when you share that book, it gets in you more. It gets in you more. But the thing about a leader, you have to understand, is a lot of times we struggle with people and we don't realize why we're struggling. But it's most generally what we don't like about others is what we don't like about ourselves. So as a leader, you have to leave that at the door. And you have to realize maybe that's something I need to work on myself about. I remember times where I was very upset with somebody, someone I would love or something, and I would sit down and I would write on a piece of paper everything I loved about them. Because what you focus on grows, and you don't want to water a plant with bad intentions. So I think it's important that you understand what you don't like about others is what you don't like about yourself, and how are you going to reframe that? Yeah, you got to reframe that. You got to sit down and write a list of all the qualities you like about that person, and you need to focus on that. Love the person, hate the sin. Love the person, hate the behavior. You know? People are going to do, this is very important. People perform to the degree of your belief in them. The more you believe in somebody, somebody believed in me, go out and believe in somebody. That's a good quality of a leader. You know, take time to talk about the positive contributions that individual brings to the game. Because I'm going to tell you right now, if you're the only somebody that knows one thing and you ain't surrounding yourself with that, man, you're the only one that knows anything, that's not good. Everybody has a contribution. Everybody. Look for it in others. That's why you're here to inspire. That's what you're here to inspire. And sexy is leadership, man. Being sexy is leadership. But I want to leave this with you. I want to leave food for thought. You do the dishes this week, I said. Think about it this way. Your fathers' wielded a sword. And for you to be here, that is so powerful. There are families that have been totally wiped out. Whole generations. Whole families. Never to walk the earth. And here we sit. And these fathers that I talk about, the generation that brought you to where you're at right now, they were leaders. They were strong men. They were good men. And there is a difference between a good man and a nice man. I don't want to be a nice man. I want to be a good man. And there's a difference between a good man and a great man. And not all great men are good men. Not all great men are good men. But today, you want to be your best this week. You want to be a leader. You want to take on that little extra responsibility and see what happens. Because when you take that step forward, the universe will meet you. But you got to be taking those steps, man. Martin Luther King said it best. When you take the first step, and the threshold shall appear. The stairway shall appear. Let's take that first step today. And how about not postponing your dreams? Something that you've always wanted to do, but haven't got around to doing it. Why don't you start that hobby or that, lesson or class that you want to do? Let's get moving in the right direction. Remember, after all, you can't tell someone else what to do unless you first tell yourself. We just had church, folks. I want to say have a great week, man. Love you. We'll talk to you next week. Ciao.